A very good morning, students. Here we have another video of our fifth chapter, separation of substances. So before start their new topic, let's revise what we have studied in our previous video. So we have studied about mixture. What is mixture actually? Their classifications, for example, heterogeneous mixture and homogeneous mixture. Then we have learnt about pure substance and impure substances. And the one unique separation method, that is fractional distillation. Fractional distillation mainly used to separate the different fuels, oil from the crude petroleum. So let's discuss. So in this video, we are going to discuss about the different separation method. So before that, we should know why we need to separate the mixture. So students, we get mixture from the nature and from the man-made materials. So that substance what we get from the nature is the mixture of some desirable or unwanted or undesirable substances. So to make them useful for our daily life, we have to separate or we have to take out all these impurity from that mixture. Okay, so we generally separate the things on our day-to-day life. Like before cooking, we have to separate or we have to take out the impurities from the food like rice, wheat, pulses, etc. So here we have a different separation methods. We will discuss one by one. So we have three types of the bases on which we can separate the things or we can separate the impurities from the mixture. So first one is separation of a solid from other solid. As you can see, we have to separate the solid particle from the another solid useful substances. As you can see that pebbles mix with the pulses or rice. Next is separation of insoluble solid from liquid. As you can see that if we dissolve the sand or soil or the chalk powder into the liquid, so all these solid are the insoluble or muddy water. So we have to separate the mud or dust from the water. So this is the process is insoluble solid from the liquid. Next is separation of soluble solids from its solution. As you can see, and the best example is salt solution and sugar solution. So we have to separate, we can also separate the salt from the water and the sugar from the water. So let's discuss how it can be possible. So first we take separation of a solid from other solid. So this method containing two different types of method like hand picking and sieving. What is hand picking actually? This method used to separate unwanted materials like pebbles, stones present in smaller amount and depends on the size, shape of the impurities. For example, rice, wheat, pulses. If some small stones with a different color and different size, so we can easily pick them by our hands. And this is how we can separate the impurities from the useful substance. Next is sieving. Generally, we all are very familiar about the sieving, churning. In this method, a sieve having holes of proper size or you can say smaller to remove bigger unwanted particles from the mixture like husk particles from the wheat flour and pebbles from the sands. So we generally use the sieving to separate the mixture or to take out the impurities. We can use the sieving on constructional side as well as in the kitchen, as you can see in the given picture. Next is winnowing. Winnowing is the process of separation of grains from the husk and hay with the help of wind is called winnowing. So generally farmers use this method for separating the wheat grains from the husk. So what will happen to them? The lighter husk particles carried away by the wind, and our wheat will separated from the husk or hay particles. So this is called as winnowing. Have a look in the picture. Next is threshing, the other separating method. The process of separating grains from sun-dried stalk is called threshing. And how can we separate by the threshing? In this process, the stalks means stem with grains. Stalks are beaten against any hard surface like rock, stones, etc. So generally threshing is also done by animals and large amount of stalks done by machines called thresher. Have a look in the given picture. The upper one indicates threshing done by hands and the lower picture indicates the threshing done by machine. Next, separation of insoluble solid from liquid. So in this method we are going to separate our insoluble substance, whether it is your sand, chalk powder or muddy water, soil, etc. So first one is sedimentation. When insoluble or heavy particles of unwanted materials like sand, chalk powder and soil settle down at the base or at the bottom of a jar, such as sand in water. As you can see in the given picture, when we dissolve any chalk powder or soil and sand, some heavy particles will settle down at the bottom very quickly. So after that the clear water will come arise. So now we can separate our clear water into the different container. Next one is our decantations. Mostly sedimentation and decantation are the similar process, but what will happen in the decantations? Coarse particle means rough particles or light suspended particles. Coarse particles of sand in muddy water and husk materials in raw rice, pulses, washed with water before cooking, then wash water removed by decantations. You generally see that when we are going to prepare or cooking the rice or the pulses, so we have to wash them. So when we put the water into the rice and dal and pulses, so we generally used to see that the water will convert into a blurry water. So that is a small and fine particles of the dust that present inside the rice and pulses. Now what will happen after putting the water or after adding the water, all the dust will come on the surface of the water. Now we can decant them. So this process is known as decantation. Next is loading. During the sedimentation, finer means a very small in size. Finer particles of a clay or a soil or a sand or any dust particles, you can say, settle down very slowly, because dust particle and very small in size particle, they are very light in nature, so they are very hard to settle down, so they will suspend inside the water. So to make finer particles settle down, we have to put some chemical, and that chemical name is alum, in water. And after adding that alum into the water, all the finer particle will load onto that chemicals. So this process is known as loading. Now our water will clear and we separate our water from the. Next is filtration. In this process, what is filtration? In this process, mixture is allowed to pass. We have a mixture and we will pass the mixture through the filter paper. Filter paper you can say, or medium. And that filter has fine or pores. So that filter have very fine and very tiny pores in that. Then impurities will retain, or you can say the impurities will remain on the filter paper, and clear liquid or water or any solvent will be separated, and that process is known as filtrations. So students, have a look in the picture. So our first container containing mixture of water and sand. Clear? Now we will take a clean or dry jar. Now we will take funnel and filter paper. We will adjust the filter paper into the funnel, and now put the mixture of water and sand into the filter paper through the funnel. So filter paper will stop or will retain all the impurities on it, and the clear water will drain off into the clear jar. So that impurities, into the third diagram you can see, the impurities retained on the filter paper is known as residue, and the clear water in the jar, that liquid, is known as filtrate. Next is churning. Churning in Hindi, bilona. What is churning? This method used to separate lighter particles of a solid that's suspended in liquid like butter from curd. So we have to separate the lighter suspended particles into the liquid, and we have to separate them by churning process. So the churning process can be done by hands as well as by machines, as you can say in the given pictures. Let's move on to the next. Separation of soluble solid from its solution. It's very difficult. How can we separate a complete soluble substance from the mixture or solutions? So it has their own types. First is evaporation and another one is condensation. Let's discuss. First we are going to discuss about evaporation. What is evaporation actually? Evaporation is a process which convert the water into the water vapor. And especially this method used to separate the soluble salt or sugar from the liquid or solvent. So students, you generally notice that when we boil a water on a stove, so when the water has started boiling, so some evaporation or some vapor will arises. So that process is known as evaporation, and the quantity of water is going to be reduced. So this process is known as evaporation, because the water that is boiling is converting into vapor. Okay, so as you can see in the given picture, all these are the water vapor, and evaporation is the only process by which we can obtain salt from the sea. So let's come on to the condensations. The process condensation is the vice versa of the evaporation. Evaporation converts the water into the water vapor. Here condensation will convert the water vapor into water droplets, as you can see in the given picture. And the best example of the condensation, when we used to take out the bottle from the fridge and keep them on a table for some time, so we generally notice that some droplets have present on the water bottle. So that droplets comes by the process of condensation. How clouds form? So this process make you clear that the best example of evaporation and condensation. So students, let's suppose we have a collection of water, whether in a pond or lakes or rivers or oceans. Okay. Now we have source of energy, sun. So sun will rise the temperature, and during the while the temperature is increasing, the evaporation will increase in the sea, in the river or in the ponds. Now that vapor will go into the atmosphere, and in atmosphere there is a air, cool air. So that vapor will interact with the cool air or cool temperature. So they will condense together. So they will form cloud. Okay. So after the formation of cloud, the condensation will happen more and more, and the vapor will convert into the water droplets. And after that, precipitation will happen, the another form of the condensation, and rain will happen. So this is how the water cycle and the clouds form and the rain will happen through the process of evaporation, condensation. So students, that's all for today. I hope you will understand very clear.